Okay, everybody. You see the title down below, and this is basically the same title, but it says updated on the end, if you could see that. Well, basically, it's going to say something like fan updates nail in coffin. Updates the nail in Sonic 230's coffin. And what that means by updates their nail is essentially after they did this, on the 23rd, basically, I think, not yesterday, shouldn't have been the 23rd. Today's the 23rd. Yeah, so basically today, if you will, let me make sure, but essentially today, yeah, or late last night or whatever, depending on their time frame, they said they found another flaw, another nail, if you will, in 230's coffin. And this is what they said, and I quote. This is basically from the same entry, but they updated it. They added the other thing that they found, and I quote. This is what they said, and I quote. I found another nail. Nicole and Sally are able to avert the beam, right? That means they must have control over it. So why can't they just stop or stall it long enough for Nicole to completely shut it down? Okay, so what they're saying there is, from what they understand, from what they've read, basically what they're pointing out is that since Nicole has control over the beam, why couldn't it be written to where she stalled it, put it either directed it, or not directed but stopped it or stalled it, long enough for them to shut it down, for her to shut it down, or for Sally to get out of firing range. They bring up a good point, but still, let's read on. Continuing on what they said, and I quote, now before any of you say that, now before any of you say that they didn't have time to stop it, consider this. They have enough time to avert the beam. This thing is basically a giant laser, right? So to invert it, the source of the laser has to be turned around, which calls a lot into question about the design. Since the source must be positioned either within the top of the tube or above it, and inverting the beam will mean that it does not pass through the tube at all, ergo, Sally couldn't be roboticized, but the rooms above for a floor, or whatever they said, or so, above a floor or so, will have major damage inflicted. Continuing on, quote, but let's give the benefit of the doubt and say that there's another roboticizer being projected below the thing. And inverting it will mean that it gets pointed up and will still go through the tube, or inverting it is a case of reversing some kind of polarity that somehow makes the beam fire backwards. Somehow, Nicole can gain control over the beam to completely reverse it, yet not enough to pause or stop it. Heck, why doesn't she just point the beam sideways so it'll go out the side of the Death Egg and spear off through the sky, missing both Mobius and Sally? And surely it takes a higher level of control over the thing to turn it around and fire it in a direction that it wasn't meant to go, than it does to just do the equivalent of pulling the plug. I know this comic seems to run on Aperturix science. That's more like techno magic than actual science, but still. TLDR, how can Nicole gain enough control to completely reverse the beam, yet she cannot do anything else about out it, like change the angle by 90 degrees, even though she can manage 180 or slow it down or stop it. Because Flynn couldn't set up his ego trip arc properly. Okay. Now, basically what they're saying in this update, ladies and gentlemen, is they're pretty much pointing at the fact that here you have Sally and Nicole, from what I've seen through scans and all that and read through summaries, they're basically in the heart, in the core section of the Death Egg, the global roboticizer, more or less. And Nicole has gained control over the laser to avert it away from the planet and towards the Death Egg. Now, what this person is pointing out is that if Nicole had the control to do that, then why couldn't she just stall it, stop it, so that they would have enough time to shut it down or enough time for Sally to get out of firing range? Or, as they point out, why couldn't she just fire it out of the side of the Death Egg, straight into the sky where no damage would be caused? And believe it or not, when I copied and pasted this onto several of the websites, like the Sonic Stadium, I didn't get much of a reply from Sonic Stadium, so that's okay. But what I did get a reply from, believe it or not, was Sega Forums. And the person that actually agreed with this individual has to say, we'll just call this person Double C. Now, it's not CC14, if that's who you think. No, it's just Double C. We're just going to call her Double C. And she does agree, in a way, with what this individual has to say. Because it doesn't make sense. I mean, technically, here's what she has to say, if I can find it, without this thing dying on me. Because I'm very limited on my battery life on my iPod. And, of course, Linsky's has to mess up, if you will. And, of course, I got to lose my internet connection, which is not that way, but it just happened. Do you ever have that problem? You're on your iPod and all of a sudden the connection just dies and yet you're just connected anyway? Doesn't make sense to me. But anyway, getting back on topic. If I can get to it. If I can get to what she says. And of course I can't. But like I said, she was basically agreeing with what this person had to say in a way. She was agreeing. I don't want this lady to think I'm misinterpreting her. But what I'm saying is, in a way, she does agree with what this individual had to say. And again, when you think about it, it does make a little bit of sense. It's like, okay, she has control of the beam. Why couldn't she just do it, stall it, stop it, point it sideways, or what? Now, I know there's going to be a lot of people that say that when you look at 230, they're going to say that it redeemed Sally. It redeemed her character. And I totally understand where they're coming from with that. And I'm sure even those like this individual that feels, that what's going on in this scenario with Sally and Nicole makes no sense, I'm sure they understand where those individuals are coming from too. I'm sure they do. But you see, even though they can understand it, what they ask in return is for those very same people that defend this issue, defend what Ian has done, to at least kind of respect and understand what they're trying to point out here. Now we have another responder to this as well, but I don't know what he's going to say. But first I'll read off with Double C what she had to say. She says basically, after she kind of remarks to what another individual said, who just, I guess, likes to be disrespectful or something, I'm not sure. But this is what she had to say, and I quote in response. Looking back through 230, I'm realizing that, yeah, it really doesn't make any sense the way it's presented here. If Sonic laughed at the fact that Eggman had a roboticizer and said that the beam made it so that it was permanent, that it could no longer be used to turn people into robots, then how did it work on Sally? And then in response to what this individual said here on this website, the DA, if you will, let's just put it that way. This is what she had to say in response at the Sega forums. She says, after the first part where it says that the sacrifice was forced, plain and simple, this is what she had to say in response to that. She said, so regular robotization isn't supposed to work on anyone? If that's truly the truth, then yeah, how did it work on Sally? I have the issue here, basically in her hands, and Sonic's laughing at Eggman, proclaiming it's a world roboticizer, and saying it can't work, and saying that it can't work, and that roboticizing all the machines is what he's going to do, so that all his ground bases, his ground robots, his Dark Legion chapters, and some of Sonic's friends and family will explode. But then the beam got inverted and it hit Sally and turned her into a robot despite all that? Anyone know why? And then the last thing she says, because of the the TLDR part with the update, this is what she says a part of that. That she basically says this. She says that she already knew this was a blank pool, though. She agrees with what this individual is saying, that Ian Flynn, because if he would have done it the right way, as they would put it, more sensible way, wouldn't be able to set up this arc. This is what she said, and I quote. She says, I already knew was a blank pool, though. The very fact that she can only avert the beam to that single point, but not redirect it at any angle slightly to the right or left, or stall long enough for Sally to simply escape, was bull blank, or BS. Now, she does point out that she read on the Mobius Wikipedia that it said that Eggman reset the world so that the beam's effect was gone, so he can now roboticize people again. She says that she guesses that's what he meant by saying that he changed the rules back. But then, if that's true, then all that's still confusing me. Is why he got so mad at the beginning of the issue by saying that it wasn't working. Did it work or not? Or was he not sure if it worked and brought up the fact that roboticizing everything that was already mechanical would be his secondary plan if it failed? But then why did he outright say that he changed the rules back with confidence, as if he knew that it did work? As if he knew that it did work. And then she brings up a little question to the person that defends this a little bit. She says, well, why did you bring up the fact that Eggman and Sonic weren't roboticized by the right? I figured it just didn't hit them because Sally said that it would only strike her exact location. But that mess you wrote here seems to imply that it was for another reason. Now, hold on for a second.